So the fifth reading continues with lots of instructions. Instructions about the upcoming Passover offering. Instructions and information about the future. We haven't yet left Mitzrayim. We're still a slave people. In fact, we're 2 weeks away from the big day. And yet, Moshe Rabbeinu is already talking to us about back to the future. Chapter 12, verse 24. Ushmartem es hadavar hazeh. You should keep this thing. L'chok l'cha. As a statute for you. Ulvanecha, and for your progeny. Ad olam, for eternity. In other words, this is not simply something we do now, says Moshe Rabbeinu, but we're setting something into motion. And it's something that will remain. It will remain with us for our future generations. What is this referring to? According to the Ibn Ezra, it refers to the making of the Korban Pesach. So the Korban Pesach itself is something which lasts. However, there are details which are not relevant. And what are they? The painting job. The painting job.
Yeah, that's going to
right? The doorpost, the painting, the dipping the hyssop. That's not relevant. So that's the emphasis on Hadavar Hazeh. It's the Korban Pesach that remains with you, but it's not all the details which are relevant for the plague of the firstborn. The Ibn Ezra says, the Ramban says, that the most important business here is the making of a Korban Pesach. He says, Matan Damim, the story of placing blood, that's unique to Pesach Mitzrayim. All right, so now we know that the Korban Pesach is an eternal statute, something that will always be relevant. Verse 25, and so it will come to pass when you enter the land. Asher yiten Hashem lachem. Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking future, the land that God will give you. Kasher diber, as he has spoken. Ushmartem es ha'aveda hazos. Then you must keep this labor. This is a labor, it's an avodah, and you got to keep it. Now, it's interesting that it says in verse 24, this is something which is going to be eternally or always relevant. And then in verse 25, it tells us when it's going to be relevant. It'll be kisavayu el haaretz, when you come into the land. So is the notion of the Korban Pesach something that is Israel-centric, kisavayu el haaretz, or is it something that's always going to be relevant? Clearly from verse 25 it seems that this is something which is when you come to the land, kisavayu. Comes the question then, what about the Korban Pesach they brought in the desert? The first year the Korban Pesach was brought in the desert. So Rashi addresses this and he says the following. V'haya kisavayu ala aretz. It'll come to pass when you come into the land. Ta'ala hakosov avodah zu. The Torah clearly seems to link this labor, this efforts, bibiyasam la'aretz, to the coming into the land. And therefore, as long as they're not in the land, v'lo nischayvu b'midbar ela pesach echad. So there is no reason for us to assume there would be a Korban Pesach brought in the desert. The Torah says clearly otherwise. The Torah says clearly it's kisavayu. It's when you come into the land.
Like, was the grand design to even spend the Pesach in the Midbar?
That's a really good question. The answer would probably be no.
Right.
But they did bring a Korban Pesach because they built a golden calf.
Right. So it's like
because they got delayed.
it wasn't like by.
That's true. But then you didn't have to say Hashem could simply say you're going to do this all the time, and obviously by next year you'll be in the land of Israel. But the Torah clearly spelled out it's kisavayu. So from this that the Torah spells out it's kisavayu, so we know sha'asu bashana hashenis, the fact that they made a Korban Pesach that second year, the second anniversary or first anniversary, when they were still in the Midbar, they did make one Korban Pesach. So that Korban Pesach was al pi hadibur. In other words, when you're in transit, you will not be bringing this Korban Pesach, save specific or special instructions. And they got special instructions, but that was only that one Pesach. Now you could tell me they weren't intended to be in the desert subsequent either. They certainly weren't. By the next year, they were for sure supposed to be in the land of Israel. Sure. And again, disaster struck, and they made a difference in the rebellion of the spies, of the scouts who refused to go into the land of Israel. So that's true. But clearly the Torah links this mitzvah to the coming into the land of Israel, for however long or short that's going to take. Kasha diber, as God has spoken. Vehechon, where do we find that God spoke diber? Where did he speak this? Oh, this goes back to the beginning of the book of Exodus, where he tells Moshe Rabbeinu about the future redemption, and he gives him his marching orders. And there are 4 lashonot, 4 expressions of geula, of redemption, and the 5th is Vehevesi eschem el haaretz. I will bring you into the land. So clearly we see God did say that he was going to do this, and the concept of the Korban Pesach is specifically linked to the land of Israel. That's clearly. Now the Ibn Ezra says something very interesting. He says, so why did Hashem tell the Jewish people on that first anniversary to bring a Korban Pesach? It wasn't supposed to be. This is an Eretz Yisrael thing. So he says that was a mitzvah el yona. That was a special instruction. It's actually not the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. It's a little counterintuitive. Somebody will tell you, we only did the mitzvah of Korban Pesach one year. Ibn Ezra says, no, we never did the mitzvah of Korban Pesach until we got to Eretz Yisrael. We got a special instruction, a special commandment from God with regard to that first year, and it looked like a regular Korban Pesach, but it was actually a special mitzvah. It wasn't the fulfillment of that mitzvah, because that mitzvah requires the land of Israel. And Ibn Ezra has some very interesting comments here. He says that the matzah that they had was miraculous matzah. They were getting manna from heaven. How'd they get matzah? How'd they get flour? How'd they have ovens to bake matzah? He maintains that in the desert, that first year, there was a miraculous thing. Hashem delivered them matzah. It was also lechem and hashemayim. He suggests that it was not regular matzah, and he says there was certainly no bitter herbs growing in the desert. It's a desert, nothing grows there. Were they chopping up a cactus? He says that one year God made a special delivery. He gave them Passover packages. But subsequent, they were eating manna. And he says the other years there was no matzah, there was no maror, and there was no actual observance of Pesach.
Didn't they observe lulav and etrog? You could argue the same thing, so.
It's easier to get etrog from a tree. Where are you going to get matzah from?
Where are you going to get an etrog from in the desert?
He sent messengers to go and pick esrogim.
So, same thing?
No? No, 1 second. On which tree do matzahs grow?
An esrog tree.
But
An esrog tree?
there are travelers in the desert.
There are. So even if you procure wheat, you have to make it into flour. Who's going to make it into flour? And then who's going to knead it and who's going to bake it?
So is this?
You know how many ovens you would need for several million people?
Is this the only mitzvah, the only miracle that isn't talked about in the Torah, or are there other miracles that aren't talked about?
There are probably other miracles that are not mentioned. That's what Ibn Ezra suggests. He says it was miracle matzah.
Kind of makes sense. Did it have the same attributes as manna? Like it could taste.
I guess it did, but I don't see why it would need to have the attributes of. Would be different. The manna was fruit from heaven already. It wasn't chametz. It didn't rise.
So what did they eat at the Seder? They just had the Korban Pesach.
What did they eat?
Matzah?
That first year?
Yeah.
The first year they had Korban Pesach, and they had matzah mar. But that was miraculous matzah mar.
Okay.
And subsequent, they didn't have
the rest of the Yom Tov, of the Chag, did they eat for 7 days?
It's a really good question. I'll tell you the truth, Nathan. I was very young. I don't remember. We don't know the answer to that question. Maybe they didn't have matzah afterwards. It's not a mitzvah to eat matzah. You don't have to eat matzah all 7 days. Maybe they got a delivery of matzah for that night. They ate matzah. They told the story, and then it was a 40-year interregnum. The next time they told the story was when they came to the land of Israel. Maybe they told the story without having all the show and tell.
Gotcha. Fascinating.
It is pretty fascinating. So Hashem essentially, according to the Orach Chaim, reveals to them that they won't be making a regular Korban Pesach until they get to the Israel, and that the desert is going to be one big delay. It's just everything's delayed. All of Yiddishkeit is delayed. It's just not happening. At any rate, moving right along, we haven't yet left the land of Egypt. We're still slaves. And Moshe Rabbeinu brings us news. You should know that when you leave the land of Mitzrayim and when you'll come to the land of Israel, you're going to have troubles. From who will you have troubles? From your children. Your children will question. We didn't even leave yet. Already we're hearing about children are going to question. Never in history did it ever happen a nation was on the cusp of emancipation and they're already talking that somebody will question. Your children are going to say to you, what are you doing? What's up with you people? What are you doing? Why are you involved in this kind of stuff? So the Torah gives you the answer. You'll tell them this is a Pesach offering. La Hashem for God. Asher posach al botei b'nei Yisrael. God sprung over the houses of the children of Israel by Mitzrayim. B'nog ve'es Mitzrayim, as he struck the Egyptians. Ve'es bateinu hitzel, our homes were saved. Vayikaid ha'om vayishtachavu. The people kneeled and they bowed. Why did they kneel and bow? Rashi says, remember, they didn't yet leave the land of Israel. They just got news. The land of Egypt. So they kneeled and they bowed. Al Basura Sagula. They got the good news. You'll be going free. They kneeled and they bowed. Val Biasaretz. They got good news. They'll be coming to the land of Israel. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu just told them. He said, you're going to leave Egypt. He said, you're going to come to Israel. What else did he tell them? He told them you're going to have children. That's good to know. So once again, Val Basura Sabanim and Ubasura Sabanim Sheyilem, the children that they would have. So the Mechilta actually says, "V'hayu ki yemru aleichem b'neichem." Is this good news or bad news? Says the Mechilta. So he says it's bad news. We have agnostic children. We have questioning children. But on the other hand, he says it's good news. At least we have children. So we have children is good news. That they're going to take our neshama out, that's not such good news. And what are they asking? Mo avoda hazois. What exactly is the question?
But it says lachem.
Yeah, lachem is the problem. It's for you people.
Yeah.
That's really what the Megillah, the Haggadah says. But the thing is like this. So what is the question? So there's various ways of understanding this. One way, says the Chizkuni, is that all things in Judaism are attached to a particular time. For example, the cutting of the fresh barley is on the second day of Pesach. That's actually 8 Ktsir Sa'irim. The 2 large breads, he said, are brought on the 6th of Sivan. That's 8 Ktsir Chitim. That's when you cut the wheat. He says, Hashem told us about the gathering of the harvest and so on and so forth. But why is it that when it comes to Pesach, we celebrate prematurely? Why do we do this the day before? It should be done on the day of. That's the issue. That's what the Chizkuni says. So what's the answer? If that's the question, the answer is because Hashem sprang over our homes. And we want to remember the miracle, not of the Exodus, but the miracle of the the plague of the firstborn, from which we were spared, which took place not when we left, but prior to having left. Okay, that's one way of understanding this. The Chizkuni suggests another issue here is, what's up with the barbecue? Why does everything have to be roasted? After all, other things from the Beis HaMikdash don't have to be roasted. Why does this have to be roasted? And the answer to that is also found in the Pasuk, that we left Mitzrayim in great haste. So because we leave in great haste, which kind of cooking is necessarily done in great haste? The barbecue. And a third possibility says we have in the Sefarno, this is the first two from the Chizkuni, the Sefarno says that generally speaking, we have on a Yom Tov a korban. On Rosh Hashanah there's a korban that's brought. On Yom Kippur there's multiple korbanot, but the korbanot are brought by the Kohen Gadol. On the festivals the Kohanim bring korbanot, offerings, on behalf of the nation. Here, everybody has to bring a korban. Why is this lachem? Why does everybody have to get involved here? And the answer there is that Hashem jumped over each and every one. And because he saved us each individually, because every home was individually passed over, that's why we have a responsibility to individually observe with this special korban. Okay, so we have 3 possibilities as to what the question is, and truth be told, these are all quite learned questions. They're learned questions. So why other korbanos are on this day, and this is the day before? This one is roasted, and the other things just doesn't have to be roasted. Here we have a situation where everybody brings korbanot individually. But really, other Yom Tovim, there's korbanot that are brought communally. This Rasha is a very learned fellow. You know what I mean? Like he went to high school. He got the full range of Jewish background in order to ask the question. Every Rasha is so smart. Every Rasha has such a nuanced question. That's what's bothering him. The difference between one kachim and the other, one korban and the other. Something's missing here. What's the basic question? Let's talk about this on a basic level. But first, we'll speak about it on a basic level. So the Rebbe said that the basic question is very obvious, and it's very basic, and it's actually a question that was asked in antiquity, and believe it or not, it's a question that people are still asking today. The average Rasha, when sits down at the Seder, does not know anything that we talked about. He does not know when korbanot are brought. He does not know how korbanot are brought. He has no clue if the korbanot are communal, plural, individual. He doesn't know from these things. But what can every single person sit at the Seder and ask, especially after he's watched everybody slave away for weeks preparing for Pesach? And if they didn't slave away, they spent enormous amounts of money to be able to go to a place where they shouldn't have to slave away. So the Rebbe says on page Reish Chav Gimel here, Siman Lamed Zayin, Yesh lefarish is diuk l'shoin she'ilasa shel ben Arash. You want to know what the ben Arash is asking? Look at his language. Follow the verbiage. What does he ask? He doesn't say mazois. He doesn't say what's this. If you think that the issue is lachem for you, he doesn't say mazois lachem or ma atem osim. What does he say? Ma ha'avoida. What does avoida mean? Avoida means servitude. That's really what it means. Avoida comes from the word eved. And eved is a slave. A person who can't quit. He doesn't have the freedom of walking away. So the Rebbe says, why do we emphasize ma ha'avoida? And he explains that avoida pirusha asiyas dvarim etechzius v'kabbalah sel. Avoida represents the kind of things that a person does because he's told. The slave doesn't identify with the orders he's given. He just follows orders. He says, yes, sir. Whatever you say. He's a slave. He does what he has to do. It does not intimate some kind of profound understanding. It does not intimate somebody identifying with the cause or the calling. Rather, it represents and intimates a person who follows orders. The Rasha has got no problem with Pesach. Every culture has holidays. Every faith system has commemorative observances. And everybody has their shtick. That's fine. That's fine. You can have shtick. Nobody comes when the York Regional Police do their march, and they march with the flag this way, march with the flag that way, and the guy wearing a skirt bangs on the thing like this, and they do bagpipes. Nobody says, why the bagpipes? Why do you have to do it this way? Why does everybody have to salute the moment the flag walks by? Why do you have to stand by the national anthem? Whatever. That's the shtick here. That's the shtick. That's how you do the shtick here. Every culture has shtick. Every culture has ways you comport yourself. It's not really a question. How dare you have your own set of shtick? We have shtick. Everybody's got shtick. So that bothers the Rasha. And everything everybody else is doing does make sense. Have you ever seen a faith system where everything that people do, every observance, every custom, every nuance makes sense? It would be disrespectful. We wouldn't countenance that kind of behavior in this country. If somebody comes and he sees a cultural observance, he says, why are you doing this? Why do you have to wear a turban? Why do you have a shmat on your head? Why do you have to eat this food? What's with the eggnog? I'm not celebrating this December with you anymore. You eat eggnog, and I don't know why you're eating the eggnog. And why do you have to eat a gingerbread man? I don't know. That's what people do. This is bothering the Rasha. What's he getting his bentera shape over here for? So the Rebbe says an amazing thing. You know what bothers the Rasha? You know what bothers the wicked Jew? What bothers him is, why do you just do these things because you're told to do it? Why don't you question? If it makes sense to me, if you give me a reason, fine. But I have to just do it because what? Because so it is written, so it shall be done. Why do I have to listen to that? So what's wrong? All right, so you follow things. Chag Pesach, this holiday of Passover, says the Rasha, it represents, it observes, it commemorates freedom. It's freedom. He says, therefore, if it commemorates freedom, we should be able to do as we please. Because it's freedom. I want to be free. I should enjoy myself. I should have fun. If I want to have 3 matzahs, I'll have 3 matzahs. If I want 3 pizza pies, I'll have 3 pizza pies. What's the difference to you? I'm free. It's liberation. For celebrating liberation, everybody should do as he or she pleases. What value is to celebrate freedom through servitude?
Big question.
It's a big question. How could you have value in the mitzvahs of Pesach, which are b'derech shel aveda v'kabbalah sel? People work until they're ready to drop in order to prepare for Pesach, and they're so exacting and so precise and so demanding, and they're just doing it because Kol Techen HaChag is Yitzia. This is all about Exodus. And Exodus me'avdos l'chedus. Going out of slavery, coming into freedom. Freedom, baby! Let me be free. He says, what are you doing to me? Why do I have to do it this way, that way, the other way? If I'm free, then let me be free. Sound familiar? This is the Rosh is upset about. He's got his nose bent out of shape. This is his Mo'ahavoida. He says, I don't care. If you want to do stuff, do stuff. But what's an avoida? You have to bow your head in submission, do exactly as God says. Why do you have to do that for? What value is that? That's not a Pesach. Maybe it's Yom Kippur, he says. Maybe it's Tisha B'Av. That's not Pesach. Pesach where he says, this is lachem, this is for you. What's up with you people? Would you people celebrate freedom this way? You people celebrate freedom by being slaves? You got to be kidding. So what's the answer? The answer is, my dear little Russia, Ilo hayasham lahaya nigel. Had you have been there, you wouldn't have been redeemed. Ilo hayisat tzedek b'tay nascha. If you think that the meaning, that the theme of Pesach is just freedom, just to be free. That's what it says in the movie, let my people be free. If you think that's what Pesach is, if you think kiyom mitzvahs, the mitzvahs have to be done with a sense of personal liberté, if the things are also about everybody doing everything once, you should know, then we would never have been redeemed. That was not what our redemption was about. Because our redemption, the story of Passover, the theme of Passover is not really freedom. The theme of Passover was freedom from Pharaoh, so we shouldn't be the Pharaoh slave, but instead we should be in servitude of Hashem. That's the theme of Passover. It's al yedei kabbalas oil of avdos l'kadosh baruch hu. It's about accepting upon ourselves the yoke of being God's servants. That's what we celebrate on Pesach. As the Pasuk says, Avodaihem, the Jewish people are my servants. I took them out of the land of Egypt. They are my servants. So people think this is about freedom in the broad and liberal Western sense. They're making a big mistake. That's not Pesach. Pesach is Hashem took us out. And Pesach is that we have the freedom to serve God, the freedom to be avodim, in servitude to the King of all kings. And that's the story of the Passover themes.